Hi, good morning, and it's Cheryl Andrews here, founder of Step by Step Listening, and we're in Manage Your Critic from Overwhelmed to Clarity in 7 Steps, which is my Facebook group where you can ask any questions you've got about the book that I wrote to help you gain clarity of what you want and the confidence to make it happen. So welcome. It's now looking at this week, we're going to be looking at step 6, which is trust. So those of you who've got the book already, you'll be looking at for page 129 to 135. And we're going to look at 3 things that I talk about in the book that can help you to build trust. But also I want to share with you another special offer as well, which is a particular, I do mention it in the workbook at the end, but it was one of those things that actually a couple of years ago I came across the tool, and it absolutely gave me the feedback that I needed to start to trust myself, to trust what worked for me, trust what would give me more energy, what would keep me in flow, and what would help me take my business to the next level, which would then allow me to live the very life that I want to live and to be there to support my family. So I'm hoping that'll be of use to you. So first and foremost, one of the 3 key learnings in the trust chapter is all about, there's 1 is comfortable with uncomfortable, 2 is trusting your own process, and 3, take your own advice. So one of the things about trust is that the brain is always looking for patterns, and it's looking for predictability. It's when you hear those expressions, you know, people are not comfortable with change, they don't like change, etc. It's because the body, the whole of your being is predicting what's going to happen. So if I were to stay here now and say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, your brain is almost going to say the 3 straight away because it's starting to notice the pattern and it will start to repeat that. And that's what happens with us in life. Hi Anne, thanks for joining us, good morning. So I want you to think about patterns. That's probably the most important part when it comes to trust, because your body, your brain, your memory is repeating past experiences and saying, based on what's happened before, this is what I can expect to happen right now. And when it doesn't happen, it's almost like your whole body, your whole being, your whole communication system is all kind of moving into that expected environment, and then it's not there. So I think of the metaphor that if you imagine that you think you've got a bridge to go on and then suddenly the bridge isn't there, you go to take a step and you feel a bit uncomfortable because you haven't got the support, you haven't got what you expected to happen. And this happens in relationships, this happens in communication, it happens in business, family. There's always those things, what you thought was going to happen, it doesn't happen. And often people go, well, I don't trust you, I don't trust it's going to happen. But the reality is things change, and much of our expectations are based on assumptions. So we haven't been looking at seed curiosity, asking enough questions to gain clarity. We haven't checked out and updated our language. We're not being consciously aware of where our attention is. Is it past, present or future? Is it on what's working and what's not working? And we're definitely not taking time out to reflect, and we're not getting feedback, which then puts us into fear, which means we don't communicate from a place of good intention and love. And that's when we lose trust. So the 3 things I want to talk about today is about being comfortable with uncomfortable. When I trained as a clean language facilitator, it was really important for me when I learned to listen to other people that whatever was going on for that person sat opposite me, that I didn't emotionally react, because it was important for them to not feel judged. So it was about me keeping my posture quite still. It was about not pulling faces, not even sort of ones go, yeah, that's really great, or oh, that's awful. Because sympathy, empathy, if you give it in one instant and then you don't give it in another instant, then someone could predict that I was going to give them empathy, and when I don't give them empathy, they make assumptions that I don't agree or I don't. And it wasn't, clean language facilitation isn't about getting my approval or getting my endorsement of anything. It's about the individual getting clarity of their own thinking. So I'm trained to keep those emotions completely out of it. And it was when I started transferring that skill to my everyday life that I really started to, thank you, I really started, Anna just said, excellent point, is when I started to really hold my emotions back and listen more carefully and not reacting to that first uncomfortable feeling. Now I talk about it in the book that I get, people talk about flutters in the stomach, I get like a knot in my stomach, it's about tennis ball size, and it starts to feel a bit uncomfortable. And what happens if I don't do anything with it, it starts to rise up through my body, and then eventually I feel like I'm being choked and I can't speak. And so what I've learned through the clean language facilitation is to take a deep breath. So you might want to breathe with me today. And I often say to you, breathe And I can find that the actual ball comes down and settles. And then what happens is I can put my attention back outside and listen to the other person rather than my attention being on inside. So be aware of that, because one of the things, if you can practice just noticing when you're uncomfortable, and then thinking what needs to happen for you to be comfortable again in this moment. And if you can get to that point where you train yourself to be listening for longer than you would normally, one, you can start to notice what's happening outside, what the triggers are, what's causing that sense of comfortableness. That's not a very good word, is it? That sense of being uncomfortable. And then you can start to keep a journal of it and start to look for patterns. Because when you get to really track the patterns, that's when you can start to see what your triggers are. And I'll guarantee it's because there's a series of things happen in your past. Your brain thinks when that happens, you get this, and it's probably not true. Not in this particular instance. And then you lose trust with that person and with yourself. So definitely, if you feel yourself being uncomfortable, take a deep breath. Check in, what kind of uncomfortable is it? Whereabouts is it? Does it have a shape or size? Find out what your uncomfortable's like. Be curious about what happened just before uncomfortable, and then notice what's happening outside and inside. So again, just flipping your attention so that you can start to notice and start to record the patterns. And that'll be taking you through the reflection process that we talked about under the step 4. So that's one, comfortable for uncomfortable. The other one is about trusting your own process. And there's a couple of ways you can do this, but for me, this is why I love running the Do, Delegate or Ditch program, and I love running the Motivator Manager Mentor group. But I can do this with clients when we do one-to-one work as well. But if you model out what is happening when something's working for you, so let's say you are really good at organising things at work, and maybe you're not so good at organising them at home, but you can think of a time when you're really good at organising something. So when you're really organised and it's at your best, that's like what? So you can put anything in there. If you're really good at doing the ironing, if you're really good at motivating your children, if you're really good at motivating your team at work, it doesn't really matter whether it's at home or work. But if you model out, and I used to find that word really hard to understand what it meant, but modeling out means paying attention to the process, working out how things work. And when you pay attention to how you work, so you might, the ones I do at the Do, Delegate or Ditch program, we do 6 models. So one is when you're working at your best. That's like what? When you're learning at your best, that's like what? And when you're living at your best, that's like what? And the reason why we do those ones is because I think that as human beings and as adults, we're constantly learning, we're constantly growing. So if we can work out what we need and how we do it when it really, really works for us, then we can get a sense of what we need to deal with anything that comes along in our life. And then we're nearly always working, even if you're voluntary or if you're a stay-at-home parent. I would put that role, that purpose where you add value is your working, and living is the things that you do to enjoy life. So that'd be things you would do with your family, your friends, or spend time on your own, whatever that might be for you. But there is some real evidence out there that when you get 3 of your models, so when I work with clients, what we do is I facilitate them using the clean language process, and we look at what happens just before that, what happens in between. So you find the first thing. So what's happening when you're working at your best? I might answer, I'm in flow. So, and you're on the call, call today. If you just answer that question, I can always ask you some questions and we can use a live interaction as you're here. So I'll ask you the question, when you're working at your best, that's like what? And if you have a response to that, I'll ask you some more questions. So for me, I'm in flow. So how I might develop that further to model it out would be asking questions like, what kind of flow? Is there anything else about that flow? And for me, the flow is like a stream, and it trickles into one of those water butts, you know, the water wheels, and it's topping up the cups on the wheel, and it just keeps things moving. Everything just keeps working. It's nice and steady. It's not going really, really fast. It's not going really, really slow. But the water wheel is just lined up where there's a steady flow of information coming in and information going out, and I can process it and I can keep up with it, and I'm keeping in connection with all the people that matter to me in my work life. So that's me working at my best. And so I might ask a question as, when you've got a water wheel like that or a stream like that and it's all lined up, what happens just before? And then what happens just before is I'm really clear that I know who I want to work with, what I want to, service I want to provide, and why it's important to them, what's the difference it's going to make to their lives. And then I might ask the question, so what happens in between knowing that, and the water wheel. And so you can start to map it out. When I work with clients, we'll get post-it notes. So I strongly recommend, if you've got some post-it notes or a bit of paper, and do this activity, is you get the post-it notes and you can map it out, and then you end up with your own step-by-step process. And if you do this 3 or 4 times, so you've got 2 or 3 of your models, you can start to lay them side by side, and you can go, oh, so I usually start with this and I usually do this, and you can start to see your own unique process. And when you understand how you work, you'll understand when things don't go right, and you know what you need. So Anne, when you're working at your best, you're feeling like you have achieved something, and before is having clarity of understanding. So I'm going to ask you the question, what kind of achieved is that achieved? And whereabouts is that achieved? So if you can just have a think about that, and I'll come back to you if I see your answers, and we can do some more on that. So this thing about trusting your own process is you have to understand your own process. And one of the things that is, if you work with a clear language facilitator like myself, we're going to feed back your information. If you work in a group, which is why I love the retreats, then not only do you get feedback about how you do something, but you also get to hear how somebody else does exactly the same thing. So for me, the other models we do on the Do, Delegate or Ditch is how do you manage time? How do you make good decisions? And how do you plan at your best? So when you start to look at each individual person's way of planning, then you can start to go, oh, well, actually my process is X, Y, and Z, but they do it like that. And you can start to pinch ideas if you want to. So one of the things that made it easier for me was the feedback process, was actually the Wealth Dynamics Business Development Tool, if I haven't already spoke to you about this. I know it's back to front, but hopefully you get the essence here. But people up here, Dynamo Energy, they tend to ask the question, what? And they tend to be very big picture. So when they do their planning, it tends to be an overview. Whereas somebody down here, Tempo Energy, they tend to ask the question when and where. So they tend to get right into the details. So like, you know, at what time on this day does that need to be happening? So they're really good at project managing and mapping it out, timing when it's going to be right for the people, and how it fits with the systems. So when they do planning, it's very, very different to the people up here. And what often happens is each of us, this is the 8 energies of the makeup, the behavior of human beings that's common to all of us. And we all are made up of all of these 8 energies. But there'll be one in particular that you are naturally drawn to, and this will be your natural way of doing it. And if you keep trying to learn how to do planning from this person, you'll constantly criticize yourself thinking your planning isn't any good. But also, you do need a bit of both. You need the big picture and you need the detail. So actually learning how you plan in a way that works for you, and then being in a group with people that maybe do it differently, you can start to develop your strategy so that you can do the big picture thinking, and you can drill down. And that's why I love clean language, because it's so good. If you're a drill down person, it'll help you expand it. And if you're a big picture, it'll help you drill down, because it starts with your natural starting point and then helps you to develop the information so you can plan, make decisions, and manage your time. Likewise, we've got people here on the Blaze Energy. They tend to ask the question, who? So this is where I am. So I used to do all of my planning based on what did my family want? What did my individual children? What did my husband want? What did his children want? What did my family? And I had like all my decisions was based on what everybody else wanted. I'd add it all up and that would become the outcome that I wanted. And that actually is why I got into a lot of overwhelm. So if you're somebody who cares about everybody else and you're always trying to please everybody else, just check first and foremost, what would you like to have happen before you try and please everybody else? Because that's another way of developing a strategy. And it might that you have to start here because that's your starting point, that's your natural way. But again, you need to get the big picture, you need to get the detail, and you need to make sure you include yourself. And getting to know how your brain works and how you think and how you process information is how you build trust in yourself. So as it's February and it's Valentine's, and I want to help you to love yourself more and do more of what you love and ditch the critic that says you can't, you can get this report from me for £75. It'll take you about 20 minutes. It'll take, it's about 25 questions, and you'll get a really detailed report on where you are on this profile and how you can add value using those maximum strengths, but also when those strengths will come up as a challenge for you and the people that you work with. So if you're interested in that, I normally do that for £75. For the first 10 who sign up today, you can have it. It'll only be valid until Valentine's Day on the 14th of February, but you can have them for £55. So the first 10 people to inbox me and say, I'd really like to know about the wealth dynamics, you can have them for £55. You won't be able to buy them online because I don't have it set up on the system. I'll have to invoice you separately. But just let me know if that'd be of interest, and you can find out today what your strengths are for £55. So on that note, and I'm just going to come back to you, clarity is understanding and would be replaying the objective or request, so I know that what steps I need to plan out and what's needed to get that delivery and feeling of achievement. And is there anything else about understanding? And I'll come back to you again in a moment. So you can see with the questions I'm asking Anne, is about really drilling down and getting the detail. And also that we naturally, Anne will have her natural process and her natural way of doing things. And I suspect, because I've known Anne a while, Anne's probably somewhere down here. She's really good. She's a project manager and she's really good at analysing data and managing it out and managing the people and then getting the systems to work together. Whereas I'm right over here. And so the way that we do things will be very different. But actually when we work in partnership, because actually these are the kind of people I need around me, is having the people that are opposite to me helps me to get the detail. And likewise, people working with me, I'd like to think these analytical people like Anne get value out of me because I can give a different perspective on people. I see things in people that are different to how other people see them. So actually managing people, motivating people, and inspiring and empowering them is the thing that I'm naturally drawn to. This is what I do naturally. So all of my plans tend to involve the people, whereas Anne will involve a bit of the people and the systems, and I'm on that journey of learning systems. Fab. So the delivering of something could be work related, and if it's personal, the same feeling as achieved is the feeling of satisfied. So I'd like to just leave you the question today, Anne. So where does understanding and clarity come from? So you did it well, and that comes from other people. So someone else saying that, is that you did it well? I'll come back on that. So we've now covered comfortable with uncomfortable. So that's you checking in with yourself so you don't end up so consumed by what's going on inside that you're paying attention to what's going outside as well. We've looked at trusting your own process and ways that you can do that. So you can do it through the wealth dynamics to get a bit of feedback and some idea of where you are on the 8 energies of the human behavior, and then how you can use those to create wealth and happiness in your life. But you can also get it through clean language and facilitation and paying attention to what works for you. And the last one is about taking your own advice. And this is one that really made a big difference to me, again, because I started to notice, and one of the things I got really frustrated with my business is I was helping other people to be really successful. I helped 30 to 40 other mums to have really great relationships with their children, and then I wasn't getting the same results for myself and my daughter. And I was really frustrated because I was giving this great advice out. People were listening to it, they were doing it and getting fab results. And then I was getting really, really frustrated because I wasn't doing it for myself. And what I started to notice is that when I gave advice to other people and I took people through a process, my critic was quiet. My critic wasn't doing the what if and you could do this or yes but or whatever. It was just like there was like no emotional attachment because I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to deliver it, so I didn't have to look at the impact on me. I didn't have to analyze that. So I was much freer with the advice I gave. And so I want to leave you with the other thing about trusting yourself and also trusting others is that the advice you give others, just check in. Is it true, if not true, that you ought to be doing that? So if you, one of the questions I think I talk about in the book is I would say to, Paige needs to show me more respect. But when I defined what kind of respect was that and what would I hear and see, I realised that I wasn't doing that to her. So I would talk down to her, I'd be abrupt with her, I'd be frustrated with her. So actually, I wasn't showing respect. So when I looked at the advice I was giving her and actually said, right, okay, I'm going to take that advice on, and I paid more attention to what I needed to do, how did I need to be and what support did I need for me to be respectful in the way that I expected her to be, it started to actually do one or two things. One, that she had a role model and she could see and hear and feel and experience being respected. 2, we discovered that both of us had a different meaning of respect, so that gave us some understanding of why she works from a different, she's on the trader profile, whereas I'm much more on the blaze and the dynamo energy. So her perspective of respect was very different to mine. But also what I realised is just how difficult it was to actually implement what I thought was, you know, respectful. When you're tired and when you're upset and you're frustrated or you're fearful, I would be snappy, and that's part of being human. So when I started to realise how difficult it was for me when I was scared, I had more compassion for the fact that she was going through change and that she was scared. And so instead of getting all het up about her showing me respect, I would simply listen to her and find out what was happening for her and what she would like to have happen. So that made a massive difference. And in business all the time, if I hear myself thinking, especially when I'm in a network meeting, I think, oh, what they need to do is whatever. I find that if I take it inside and just go, actually, is that something I needed to do? And I found that in the last couple of weeks, I was really focused on follow-up. It's like people don't do enough follow-up. They don't look after their clients. And I was sort of busy having my rant in my head, by the way, not to the people, about what people ought to be doing, what they should be doing, what they could be doing, and realised actually I wasn't doing that. So it was a couple of weeks ago now, and I sat down with my PA, Tracy, and we said, right, we've got to do more work to show the step-by-step listening love to our clients, because I'm giving this advice out, but actually I stopped doing it. I know how to do it, and I used to do it, but for whatever reason I stopped it. So 3 ways you can build trust. Be comfortable with uncomfortable. Get to know your own process. That could be through things like the Wealth Dynamics Business Development feedback tool. It could be working with somebody like myself, or simply just plotting your own process and paying attention to it and keeping a journal and starting to understand the patterns of how you do you. And lastly, if you give advice to other people, just take it on board and just check with yourself, is that something you should be doing? Because when you take your own advice, often you are full of wisdom and it can make a massive difference. No, you, Cheryl's the helping well. Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you for joining me, Anne. If you want to carry on with the discussion, I have got my daughter, as it happens, to coming in for breakfast shortly. So I won't be straight on with loads of questions, but what I will do is place a link so you can find out a bit more about the Wealth Dynamics. I also found out about this when I went to Fast Forward Your Business in 2015. And it's a summit where lots of entrepreneurs get together, people who really want to make a difference in the world. And when I got together with a group of people that were the same energy as me, and we started going, oh, we all have the same problem when it comes to growing our business. And it's like, oh, so I need to meet some of these people. And so when I knew who my support triad was, it has transformed the way I do business. So I've now created a structure where I work with a lot more creators, and I'm able to grow my business by doing more of what I love and ditching the critic that says I can't. Because then I don't have to do the stuff that I find difficult. I have PAs that do a lot of the steel energy. I have creators who come up with all the ideas, and I'm the person who motivates and inspires people to find out more about these people. So hopefully that's of use to you. If you can just share, perhaps Anne, because you're on live, one thing that you've got from today and what you do differently, that would be great for me to check in later. I'll speak to you all soon. Thanks for joining me, guys. Bye.